Hi guys, I'm Finn van der Aar and we are here in beautiful Bundoran with Ralph from Moneycube, and as part of Pensions Awareness Week we are going to talk about how to actually start a pension. So right at the very beginning.
Hi Finn,
hi.
Good to be with you.
Thank you for joining me in Bundoran. So I guess I feel like the very start is starting a pension. What does that even mean? Like, what is that for? So obviously I'm thinking kind of from my age group, maybe people know a little bit about the state pension, but could you even just intro us to the concept?
Yeah, sure. So a pension is a very simple thing at heart. It is a pot of money that is saved with your name on it for cracking open when you want to stop working, and I guess, when you stop working, typically your income stops as well. So really important to kind of get that income in place for those years, and it comes from a combination of you putting in money and typically your employer potentially putting in money as well, and then the government really want us to use pensions to save for when we hang up our boots, so they offer a very generous tax treatment. And I guess then the fourth kind of engine of your pension is investment growth, and I think that's something we'll maybe talk about in terms of ethical pension investment options and so forth.
Well, and I guess, so coming from my own point of view, I think my kind of impetus to start looking at pensions was I'm self-employed. I've been self-employed for maybe 6 years now, since I was about 25. And it was one day just kind of starting to get to grips with finance and looking at things like, what was my net worth, and kind of making plans for the future, looking at down payments on houses. And it was looking up the state pension, even just the contributory one, not even talking about the non-contributory, and realising that it really wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
And that maybe I needed to put something else into the pot. So I guess maybe people don't realise, and I also didn't understand at the time, obviously we're paying how exactly does it work? So say even just from the state one at the start, we're paying in our PRSI every year. How much? What's that doing?
Yeah, so let's cover the state pension. That is, if you like, a kind of baseline for most of us. Right now, 12,900 per year, so kind of $1,000 a month. Not a lot to live on, but probably you won't starve. But I guess the vast majority of people are going to want to have something over and above that in place. So that's where making a start on your own personal pension comes in, and that's a matter of paying in money typically on a monthly basis, or a lot of self-employed people might do it by lump sum depending on how their year is going and whatnot. But I suppose that is the piece that's been missing from a lot of this dialogue, is that people don't appreciate that it's their money. So when you put that money in, yes, it has restrictions on how you can take it out again, because driven by your age and so on, but actually the money that goes in belongs to you and is within your control, whether you put more in, whether you put less in, how you want to invest it, and manage it just like any other asset that you own throughout your career and your life.
And I think you touched on it a little bit there when we said obviously we'll talk a little bit further about ethical investing, things like that. I think a lot of people also didn't realise, and I also didn't understand, I always thought of investing as like investing in the stock market or getting a property portfolio or something like that. I really didn't understand that a pension is also an investment. Yeah,
exactly. So like, if you think about a pension, for many of us, you have that money tucked away for 40, 50 years, you'll be drawing it down in your 80s, right? So like, it's an ideal time frame for investing. And what happens in the stock markets day to day, and you hear about a move of a couple of percent, absolutely irrelevant in terms of zooming that chart out to a 40-year view. So like, a pension is the ideal vehicle for the vast majority of us to invest our money. Why would you invest it? Well, I guess we all know cash in the bank at the moment on a good day pays you next to nothing. On a bad day is actually costing you money. So when you invest the money, that's being put into projects which have long-term potential to provide decent growth on the money you've put in. And certainly over the last, say, 10 years, you'd be unlucky if you weren't seeing kind of at least high single-digit percentage growth year by year in a kind of equity invested portfolio. Some years far better than that. So that's why that kind of really propels your pension, that kind of growth year on year, and that starts to compound as you go on.
I was literally just about to ask you about that. So again, one of the, I guess, the holy grail phrases that I only learned about a couple of years ago was the idea of compound interest, which sounded like magic at the time, but now I understand it a little bit better. But maybe could you even just describe that a little bit for us too?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I suppose it's really exciting about a pension, or at least, if not exciting, good.
Good, really good.
Is the way it compounds, right? So, easy numbers, if you put in €100 in year one and it grows 10%, it's pretty easy. You've got €110. But where it gets interesting is in year two, you're now putting in 110. Yeah. And if that grows at 10%, you've got €121. So already you're seeing that extra kind of growth that you got in year one deliver even more growth in year two. You roll that forward over 40 years, you're talking some serious numbers. So actually, like the real kind of the power behind the pension is that long time where that growth is compounding over and over on itself to increase your assets.
And I guess the next thought, and obviously what I'm thinking of it is as someone who's 31, don't mind saying my age, is when obviously the annoying thing you often see with kind of finance people on YouTube and stuff is they're saying the best time to start is yesterday. You're like, oh, fair enough, I didn't start yesterday.
Yeah.
So when is it really important for people to have a look at this?
Well, I guess as someone who's 41 and does mind saying his age, I guess the thing about it is, the old, I wouldn't start from here. Well, we are wherever we are in life, and you can't really fight it. That's what I've found out over this last 41 years. So, the point about it is, I think people get hung up on, I can't solve my pension today. Well, no, you can't. Nobody can. But what you can do is make a start, and start building those bricks now and getting that compounding effect going, So, I would absolutely say, the sooner the better, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you have to be ploughing in thousands out of your paycheck. Clearly, a lot of people, say in their early 30s, have a lot of competing demands on their money, and that needs to be recognised. It's all about house deposits, it might be about childcare, it might be, there's going to be travel costs in there and whatnot, So, definitely a pension needs to fit into to your wider financial situation, and you don't want to be living on beans and rice just so that you're going to have a great retirement.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, I think it's about working that into your financial plan in a manageable way, so that you start to see some of the benefit of it come through, feel ownership of that as another asset aside from your house and your savings and whatnot, and that's when people start to really get behind the idea of building it up in a more serious way.
Well, and I guess I really like what you said there of, obviously, I think one of the things that I've found as a barrier when I started looking at pensions is I was kind of going, okay, well, I understand that if I started in my 40s, I've missed out on those 10 years, but equally then I was thinking about things like house deposits and stuff like that. So nearly, if I'm taking you right, would be what you're saying is, even if you are starting now, just accept like start smaller, just so you're starting, so at least that's compounding.
Oh, completely, and especially if you've got an employer paying in as well, plus the benefit of this tax, so if you're paying top rate tax, which isn't difficult to do in Ireland because it kicks in at a low rate, is, for every €60 that's coming off your paycheck, you're landing €100 into your pension, So right off the bat, you've grown that €60 by 67% into €100, So there are a lot of tailwinds to a pension in Ireland that make starting with what are comparatively small, manageable amounts actually turn into something quite meaningful. And I suppose what's more is, the earlier you start, the easier it gets in terms of the long term, So
you're probably also more used to seeing that come out as well if you're started.
I guess so. And then a little kind of couple percent increase every year, and it's like any other thing. If it becomes a habit, it's just a lot more easy to manage, and it becomes more meaningful financially, right? So but if you start in paying into a pension at the age of 30 versus starting at the age of 50, you have to put more than 3 times the amount in at age 50 to land at the same retirement pot. When you hang up your boots. So it really is. The benefit is to all around smoothing that out and doing it over many years.
Well, and you touched on it a little bit there. So obviously I've been talking from a self-employed person's point of view, but if, say, for example, someone's employer does have some kind of pension system set up, is that something they have to opt into, or how does that normally work?
We find it's very variable, so like you're right, like it's if you join a big firm and it's kind of one of the forms you fill in on induction
one of the many
day
forms.
and and it's kind of fine, and you can almost end up building up an asset without noticing it, and that's great. So it is definitely the case that like if you're in a kind of big workforce like that and it's built into the system, that can help. I guess self-employed people and people in small and medium businesses make up the vast majority of the workforce in Ireland, and typically they do have to look out a little bit more and make sure that it's kind of happening when it should. If there's employer money, that they're not leaving that on the table, and there's just a general move, I think, in terms of how we all manage our finances, really since the crash, that when the chips are down, your wealth and your financial position is your responsibility, and there may not be anyone around to help you. So I would certainly say, for people, if you're employed, ask a few questions around this. What's on offer here? We've got stuff coming up later in the week around data on how many jobs are coming with a pension offer, which is surprisingly low, and some of that is demand led, like that we're not pressing employers enough for what's on offer here in terms of pension as part of my wider package of benefits, so that's part of it. But it also is about thinking, gosh, how much tax am I paying in my, each month in my paycheck? What would that look like if I was to save that tax and put it into a pot that I can invest with my name on it for the long term?
Well, and that's a great one actually to chat about as well. Is obviously, I know, and maybe I've used a little bit about it, but there's obviously some good tax incentives for actually starting your pension. So maybe could we talk a little bit about that too? Yeah,
sure. So, as I say, the government strongly interested in getting us to do this, right?
They would like us to make sure we look after ourselves. Yeah.
So, there's really 3 big tax engines to saving into a pension, right? The first, which I've mentioned there, is that the money you put in saves you income tax at the highest rate you pay tax. So again,
so if it could bring you down a bracket, basically, is that what you mean?
Yeah, near enough. So effectively, the money you put in will be topped up by the amount of the rate of tax you pay. So €60 of your money is paying in €40 if you're paying in an additional €40, which is the 40% tax at the top rate. If you pay standard rate tax, for every €80 you put in, the government tops up effectively with 20. So that's a 25% uplift at the standard rate. So it's strong either way. So that's the first one. The second is, once the money is in your tax wrapper, it grows tax-free, So, like, if you compare that to, say, even this bank interest that you might receive a few pence a year,
1% or something
on a good day,
like that.
So, even that is being taxed at whatever it is, 30%. So here you've got 0% tax on the growth in the investment of your pension, and then the final kind of tax kicker is when you do retire your pension or start to draw down your pension, you can take a lump sum, and that is tax-free for the first 200k. So there's a big potential tax-free kicker then on retirement as well.
And is it quite often that people would that be nearly like something to finish paying off your house or a big trip, or is that quite
I think like back in the day it was designed that that might be like you'd put paid to your mortgage at that stage or whatnot. I think these days it's probably just
a nice boost.
Like there's probably people's kind of mortgage terms and stuff are a little different there anyway, but it's like it is just a big tax-free lump sum on retirement, so you can invest that again and so on. Or some people might, for example, you can do things like you might postpone actually drawing down your pension in order to keep it invested for longer, and then use that lump sum to live off in the early years of retirement. But what it all about, everything to do with pensions is like, what can you do to maximize your financial position and create options for yourself over the long term? Give yourself flexibility, throughout your long life.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I'd love to kind of touch on is, I think often there's like a fear to start. Like, we think pensions are this terrifying, complicated thing, not even thinking of the benefits of things like taxes are obviously the benefit for the future. But maybe can we talk a bit about like where to start? Like, for example, say I would still have a bit of business debt from a business that I had that didn't work out. And so I'm thinking of, okay, the business debt's about 6% interest, then I'm also still trying to save my deposit for a house. And so where, as I navigate those bits, getting myself some financial advice, where as someone is navigating, say someone living in Dublin, where they're looking at a really, really high maybe house deposit price, are they weighting one over the other? Are they trying to do both at the same time? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. Like, so I think the answer there is
nuanced one, sorry.
So like, it's about finding a place in your financial, like in your monthly expendiure for this, and that might be 75 quid coming out a month, whatever, which is costing you 60 or less per month after you've had the tax benefit, So I'd say find a place for that and kind of get it ticking over, with the tax benefit, that 6% figure, pure maths, it's still going to be better using a pension for that, So I would say it's about making a start with what you can, rather than putting off something that becomes
condition that is probably not going to materialize quickly. And
I guess the other thing about like the whole ethos of Pensions Awareness Week is about taking action from where you are now, so we're not looking for government policy change or our salaries to double overnight, but actually what we all know we can do is take a couple of small actions that will make a meaningful difference to our long-term position if we make them now. So it's all about small actions that can radically change your position over time.
Well, and I guess kind of something I'd be really interested in myself, I've been kind of learning over the last, I'd say about 18 months, about ethical banking and also ethical investing. So when we're talking about that in terms of pensions, what does that look like?
Yeah, and I know this is like a huge part of your background as well, and that's probably what's brought us to the noise of the seagulls and the occasional wasp here on the beach. Like, there's been a huge kind of awakening of interest over the last, really quite recently, like probably 18 months even, in terms of how your money is invested, and in particular investing your money ethically. And we're actually doing a couple of things as part of Pensions Awareness Week to communicate some of that awareness. We have a one-to-one with Sarah Norris, who manages the Impact investment fund for Aberdeen Standard, and what Sarah will be talking about is how she invests that fund, but it's all about putting your money into projects which not only can deliver a financial return, which is, as we talked about, kind of the point, but also like have a positive impact on the world around us, So like one of the companies she has invested in is geared towards dealing with like the emissions from cows, and making that like less harmful to the planet, right? So like literally kind of having a tangible impact on the world around us, as well as kind of sort of euro-dollar returns or whatever.
Kind of double investing for your future that way, like making sure it's healthy and then making sure it's financially healthy too.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the whole point, isn't it? Because like if your investment isn't sustainable from a financial perspective, you're goosed, right? So actually what people are starting to realize is, in another way, your investment needs to be sustainable in terms of the world around us, So that's what Sarah's going to be talking about. And then secondly, we've got a session all to do with what's happening at Sustainable Finance Ireland, which is a body that's been put together not just to talk about pensions, but to talk about how all of finance in Ireland needs to get to grips with the world around us.
Completely. Like, I only found out recently, and I'm in the process of swapping, that I didn't know that the bank provider I had is still one of the ones that heavily invests in fossil fuels. Yeah. So now I'm swapping over to another one. I won't name any names, but
now this is back to this whole theme of taking charge of your money and realizing that financial decisions we make have an impact around us, but also we have control around that and how we direct our money, So if I go back to your question, I think what people have realized is they can direct their investment choices to reflect some of that need as well, So like last year, for example, when things were very uncertain in kind of March, April time, one of the things that happened was there was a massive oil price crash, and it just happened that, people who had invested in portfolios that were fossil fuel free, for example, were insulated from a lot of that impact, and have seen strong gains since, So I guess the point is, we can now direct our investment choices in a way that is in line with our own preferences for wider life, but also that can bring financial and long-term benefits as well.
Well, and even I guess kind of wrapping it up as well, what I really loved, kind of what I've even gleaned from this is, I think a lot of us have this vision of the kind of perfect situation that we have to be in first, like the credit card's paid off, the house is bought. I really like that idea that we're just doing a little bit, because it's both starting it and starting that wonder of compound interest, but then also getting in the habit, kind of like what you said, getting in the habit. And I think that's a really nice one for us to take away. And also a big one, like we said, I have a huge interest obviously in ethical and sustainable investing. So again, that kind of dual idea of you're investing in your future financially and also kind of in the world you want to see.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. And sounds like Bundoran is waking up a little bit here. So much for going to the quiet countryside, but I think it's probably as good an example as any of not making the best the enemy of the good. We take this world as we find it, and actually making a start where you are today is the best thing you can do for your financial future, and that's never going to be perfect, but it can make a meaningful difference. So I would just say, we've got a great week ahead of events, including some of those themes you've touched on. It's all to be found on pensionsawarenessweek.ie, and certainly over at Moneycube if you do want to take action. That's the place to go.
Fantastic. Rafe, thanks so much for joining me today, and guys, thank you so much for watching.